Hello, today I've really been thinking about how I can better introduce my units to allow students to really understand the statement of inquiry and also the key and related concepts and the global context. So now what I tend to do is introduce the topic of the unit, tell them a little bit about it, and then I'll say, this is the statement of inquiry, this is the most important part. Often I don't really go through the key and related concepts because they're in the statement of inquiry, even if it's not word for word, they're part of the big picture. But actually, I think breaking them down into individual components could be really powerful too. And yesterday I was at Teach Meet in Munich, and an awesome teacher called Abril did a really cool thing about conceptual understanding, and she's talking about just really kicking off with a key concept for a unit. So I'm going to change how I introduce. I also usually also do the factual inquiry questions as a general discussion. Then I'll show them the conceptual and debatable, but we unpack those later in the unit. However, this is what I'm going to do now. I'm going to introduce the big picture, the key concept, related concept, global context, then the statement of inquiry, and then I'm going to introduce them to the unit, the topic of the unit. So hopefully this will be much more memorable for them, and because they allow for the easy transfer of knowledge because they're already not just thinking about those things in relation to my unit. We'll already have a discussion about those concepts and context without them even knowing what my unit's about. So I think it will be really good. I hope it will be really good. What I've done is I've made a template which I'll use for a few of my units to see how it goes. I've made it so that anyone can use it regardless of your subject. So I'll go through it now with you just to show you how to use it. Then I also have an example of mine. So I'll start the unit with start. It's time to start a new unit. Let's find out more about the big picture and purpose first. So already I'm showing them this is the most important thing. The most important thing is not being great at coding or great at cutting wood. This is what's important to me. And then I'll have the key concept, and what I've done is I've made this document which has all the key concepts in for all the subjects. It shows you which are your the key concepts which are the responsibility of your department. Obviously, you can pick out any key concept that you want, but you must have yours covered. I then have a box of each of them below, and then what I have is the general description. So this is the description that will appear in every single subject guide for a subject that has communication as a key concept. It also appears in From Principles into Practice. Now, if you go into the Lang and Lit guide and you're looking at where it has the key concepts, it will have communication, it will have this paragraph, and immediately afterwards, with no description of how it's different, this paragraph. So I've really broken it down so you can see the subject ones. And I'll actually unpack both those things. I'll unpack first the kind of the big picture or the big description for the transferable part, and then the individual descriptions for the subjects. So firstly here, just the name of the concept, and after this Teach Me I was at, Abril, who led an awesome session about conceptual understanding, she said one of the most important things she does is say, when have you heard this word before? So she has a unit with her MYP 1 students about systems, and straight away they're like, oh yeah, we did the digestive system last year in PYP. So they're very good at being able to give examples of when they heard the word before. What does it mean might be the kind of harder bit. They can give examples of different types of systems, but maybe actually defining the system could be hard. And then what could it mean in design, or what could it mean to designers? And you can actually do a massive activity here with flip chart paper, with them brainstorming as many different systems as possible, if that's the key concept. Trying to come up with a definition, etc. What I then will do is have systems, for example, and then that description From Principles into Practice. So a reminder that is this first part up here. And then we can discuss that. So I have a key here, but the next one is how the subject unlocks it. So then I put the key concept and then the subject-specific information. Now what you'll notice with some is it's quite short and easy to do. With design, they kind of give a kind of conceptual way that we would look at, say, communication in design, but then they also give practical versions. So if I go down to systems, you can see it's really long what they have. And it actually gives examples. So open loop systems have an input, processes and output. It becomes a little bit less conceptual in the MYP design guide. So you don't have to put all this information. I actually put, in the example I'll show you, just down to where it says the design cycle is an example of a system. I also don't always like that, for my description, for my example, I just copy pasted it from here, but I don't always like that it says students instead of we, so you could also change that too, I guess. So after they've unpacked that and looked at the subject-specific definition, we move on to the related concept. You could either, if you have more than one concept in your unit, related concept, you could put them on the same post-it note, or you could do multiple slides. So have you heard this concept before? If so, when? How might we use this concept in design or as a designer? Then I have the description. So this is another document I've made. So this one, I have all of the related concepts for all of the subjects. They've come straight out of the subject guides. And then just because I think you have view only, so I don't know if you can sort the data. This one's alphabetically. This one is by group. And then if you are like in sciences, you can see the biology, chemistry, and physics. And I also just added in duplicates because I think it's interesting to see which ones come up multiple times. So going back to this, I would just have the description there as well. Okay, and this is kind of a long piece of text, but what you would do is you would add in the experts for your subject and then the concept. So say, for example, you are a scientist and you're looking at balance. You could say, can you think of examples of how scientists use balance in their practice, or can you think of examples of how scientists explore balance? Sorry, this is such a clumsy part of the template. Next part is the global context. So what I have here is a space for the name of the global context, the exploration, and the description. So if you're new to MYP, what I mean by that is the name of the global context. There's 6 of them. It could be identities and relationships. And then we have over here possible explorations. Now you don't have to use any of these, or I guess any at all, and you can make up your own. That dramatic sigh that you may have just heard is my dog who's lying next to me, not me. You don't have to use them. However, I find they're really, really useful for subject planning, for unit planning. They really, really help drive a unit forward to make sure you've got the right global context for what you're trying to explore. I think they're fantastic. So this is what I mean by explorations. Some of them are long and have kind of multiple parts. So you might not be looking at human nature and human dignity. You might just be looking at ethical judgment. Or down here, you might really be looking at craft, but not really focusing so much on artistry and beauty. So you can kind of pick apart the explorations as well. And then when I say the description, what I mean is this part here. Now maybe you could just even have the kind of more abstract, who am I, who are we, or you could put in the full description. And then I have this thing where it says, why is this important to me? Then my community. Community can be class community, school community, local community, religious community, any community they feel they belong to, and then why is this important to the world? I mean, you could do a whole lesson on this where they're looking at which things in the news or which global issues are connected to the global context. And also this means that they start thinking about local, moving to global. So I always like starting small and going big. Next thing is I finally introduced the statement of inquiry. A statement of inquiry obviously includes key, related, and global concepts and global context, though not necessarily done as a fridge magnet exercise. They could be alluded to. Then it says, how could this statement relate to design or designers? How could it be used in other contexts? Remember that your statement of inquiry is supposed to be something transferable. It's supposed to be something that's not subject specific or time specific or place specific. It's supposed to be this kind of big picture thing. So actually going through this template and using this, you might look at it and be like, oh, actually this isn't relevant in other contexts or for other subjects. I really have made it too specific. Yeah, so hopefully that will help teachers too. Finally, only on slide 9 will I insert the unit title and then a little description of the unit. My students tend to know what the units are coming up because I kind of refer, oh yeah, we'll use this again in animation later in the year, or we'll use this brainstorming technique when we're doing coding. And I tend to try and get them excited. Like as a unit's wrapping up, we tend to often also have like a little 2-week break between units where we're doing different activities. So they tend to know what they are. The example I've made, I don't think I've talked to the students about this because they actually have a tiny mini unit in between this and the next one. So it'll be good for me to practice and see how they like me using this template. On the last page, I have everything coming together. So to show you how this works, I'm going to show you an example. Probably as I'm showing you the example, I'll realize all sorts of typos or things to improve, but let's go. So, introduction to my unit. Key concept is systems. So when have you heard this word before? Hopefully they'll remember, this is grade 8, that we did something with systems in the beginning of grade 7. Hopefully they can think about digestive systems, all sorts of things. What does it mean? This part again is really hard. Giving examples of systems, easy peasy. Trying to actually define system is hard, but hopefully we'll see what they do. And then what could it mean in design or to designers? So I could even get them to brainstorm, okay, brainstorm all these systems. I want you to cross out all the ones that are not related to design. There's loads of things you could do with this. And then I have, what does it mean? Systems are a set of interacting independent components. Systems provide structure and order in human, natural, and built environments. System can be static or dynamic, simple or complex. So now they can look at the different examples of systems and see how they link. We can even get them to write next to it if it's simple or complex or dynamic, if it links to human, natural, or built environments. I love this description. I think it's really cool, and they can do loads of it. So what does it mean for design? So while exploring the concept of systems, students, again I might change it to we develop an awareness and understanding that everything is connected to a single system or multiple systems. Products and solutions are systems and components combined to carry out a specific function. Systems are also structured processes. The design cycle is an example of a system. So I wanted to end with this part of the descriptor because it's given an example. I want them to now use maybe some of these words to describe some of the systems that they came up with. So is it part of multiple systems? Yeah, then we can also use the thinking routine, parts, purposes, and complexities, which is a Project Zero thinking routine we use a lot when we explore systems, and that connects really to this nice descriptor. Next thing, the related concept is collaboration. Hopefully they have heard this concept before. What I really want them to think about here is maybe how they've heard it in school before, because I want them to think about social skills and collaboration skills and ATLs. Mainly because I'm the ATL coordinator, but also I want to see if they can make that transfer, not just between subjects, between lessons that they go to, but between that bigger kind of skill, or one of the big picture things of the MYP. How might we use this concept in design? So we can say in class, I think that's what they'll go to first, and they'll say, oh yeah, teamwork or group presentations, and then I'll get them to think about how can designers use it, so design teams, and then how can other people connect with designers? So what's the different levels of collaboration? It's also great here to kind of talk about, if we're working on a group project, how do we know what our roles are? How can we make sure we're responsible for work? So collaboration is one of those other things which we can really pick apart for a whole lesson if we wanted to. And also get them to start thinking about famous collaborators in design. So an easy way to do that would be celebrities that have done fashion brands, for example. Okay, collaboration involves two or more people sharing expertise and experience, working together to solve a problem and realize shared goals. So I really like this definition particularly because you can use this all the time. I can use this when students are arguing in class about something, or I can use this as a guide when they're doing a group presentation in their advisory. So this is, I really like this definition. Can you think of examples of how designers use collaboration? And really, hopefully, they'll pick out things like problem here, because obviously designers are problem focused or solution focused. And I also really like this word of expertise as well, because I talk to my students as designers or as experts. So yeah, I like this one a lot. Then I do global context. In fact, what I'm going to add on, and I'll do it just now as we're recording, but don't be mad at me. I already went back and added this on because I think it makes more sense if they know, okay, this is the global context. Sorry, it's ugly. Okay, global context. For this one, it's personal and cultural expression. And we're looking at systems, models, methods, products, processes, and solutions. Now, I like this exploration for personal and cultural expression because it doesn't at first glance seem to marry. Like, if I give students that exploration and tell them what global context is this for, I think they would not choose personal and cultural expression. but that kind of also links to the big picture of our unit. So what is the nature of purpose of creative expression? Students, or we, or designers, will explore the ways in which we discover and express ideas, feelings, nature, culture, beliefs and values, the ways in which we reflect on, extend and enjoy our creativity and our appreciation of the aesthetic. So maybe some of them have made the link here, but what we're going to be looking at a little bit when we look at this collaboration and then personal and culture expression is if you're collaborating, especially in a big team, is there still room for you to show like your own style or your own expression, or do you have to be following the brand identity, or like just does it water everything down? So I think that would be interesting for students. And then why is it important to me? So why should I care about personal and cultural expression and expressing myself? Why should we care as communities? Why is it important to the world? So maybe they'll start here with kind of teenage angst, and they'll talk here more about freedom of speech, and then lastly like being a kind and fair and nice world who understand people are different. Again, linking to the IB's mission statement. So even as I'm recording this, I'm suddenly seeing all these connections and kind of big picture things. I'm happy. I'm going to try this way. Okay, then I show them the statement of inquiry. So hopefully you can see this statement of inquiry could be explored in hopefully in all subjects or outside of school. Collaboration leads to the better creation of accurate systems and models. So maybe I could change this to collaboration leads to the creation of better systems and products. It might need a little bit of rejigging. How could this statement relate to design? How could it be used in other contexts? And again, I think it can be used in both. So then I tell them about the unit. The unit is actually an animation unit. The first thing they do is they explore different techniques. They do everything from JavaScript animation in Khan Academy through to claymation and stop motion animation and paper cutouts and whiteboard animation. They also do some stuff in Blender and Unity. They do a whole range of stuff. And they won't do all of that. They'll pick a few. I think we'll all do probably JavaScript animation, and then they'll have a selection. Those students who want to challenge themselves will do Blender, for example. Students who feel more comfortable using pen and paper could do a flip chart book. It's totally up to them. But what they're going to do is also they'll work in teams eventually, teams of 2, 3, or 4. And those students will each be responsible for a different type of animation. So it could be that one student wants to make a really, really beautiful character or model, something that is very detailed but only moves a slight bit. In Blender, that could be like the opening title of a video, and then they could have cut out papers spelling out the title of the video. The first bit would be like the icon of the video, equivalent to a splash page, I guess. And then the title or the text for the video, and then the next thing could be claymation. So they're going to be collaborating. This one is a little bit different to how they would collaborate, obviously, as real designers, where maybe it's more seamless, who does what, but I want to be able to see exactly everyone's responsibilities. They're also going to look at collaboration within the animation industry, so all the different jobs and roles that are involved in Pixar, for example. Then they're going to look at what I said before about how people don't always have their own style shown if they're part of a massive team, but then we're going to look at some famous Disney animators through there. Then what we're also going to think about is collaboration outside of just with designers or in an animation studio. We're going to think about how other people collaborate with designers. So, for example, Greenpeace collaborating with a range of animators to make powerful videos for themselves. There's also a really cool company called Imaginary Friends Society, and I guess it's a company or a charity. They approached, I think, 12 different animation studios and said, hey, we are trying to make resources for kids with cancer. We'd love you to contribute. And these animation studios said yes. They each designed an imaginary friend, so they're usually kind of monster, like cute little monsters. And then one animation studio made a video, What is Cancer? Another one did, What is an MRI machine? Another one did a video called Feeling Sad. So it's kind of that, talking about the collaboration between the two parties. And then looking at our statement of inquiry, that collaboration between Greenpeace and the animators, or Imaginary Friends Society animators, it drives... it makes better stuff, right? Same with the difference between an animator making something individual. Yes, there are people who are astounding animators who can make wonderful things by themselves, but actually things like Coco, things like Nightmare Before Christmas, they can only be made because of larger teams. Like people wouldn't be able to do that kind of expression, personal, cultural, or whatever, or tell those stories in such fabulous detail as an individual. So hopefully that all makes sense, and by looking at those things first, they can really understand the importance of the unit. So at the end, I'm going to put it all together. I'd love to have some feedback. If you want to use a template, please go ahead. I'd love to see what you do with it, to see about your units, to see how your students respond too. Thanks.